Yo, what's going on, YouTubelets? This is my full review of the 2015 or third generation Motorola Moto G. If you guys missed my first impressions and mini review, you can find that link somewhere right up here. It's a little card, just go ahead and click on it, and that will give you the rundown, the specifications, pretty much an overview of what the Moto G consists of. To keep this video nice and short, or at least as short as possible, I'm gonna go ahead and skip over most of the specs behind everything and just base this review off my experience and what my likes and dislikes of the 2015 Moto G are, plus why you should care. So let's start this thing off with durability. The 2015 Moto G is pretty much completely made of plastic, except for that little metal strip that goes down the center of the back. And of course it is fully customizable. You get to pick out what color backplate you want, as well as what color metal strip you want. And as far as the durability on that plastic goes, it's pretty damn good. I've experienced no scratching or anything like that, but then again I really haven't dropped my phone. But pulling it in and out of my pocket or putting it in a pocket with keys in it, I haven't had any scratches whatsoever. Now as far as the front of the phone goes, you have Gorilla Glass 3, and it's to be expected. Again, no scratching, but there are a few little micro scratches that I can see, but that's typical even on phones that have Gorilla Glass 4. Now one thing I really like about the Moto G is its curvature and that rigid design on the backplate. It gives you a really good grip. And for a 5-inch phone, it really sits in the palm of your hand excellent, and it's a great one-handed device. So they say the 2015 Moto G is water resistant on the website, but it's really waterproof. You can expose it up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes and it will be just fine. I've tested it. As long as that backplate is secured correctly. The only issue I noticed was inside the 3.5mm headphone jack, I've noticed some corrosion, and this might be because I took it inside the pool and the chlorine kind of broke the metal down a little bit, but I've experienced no issues with plugging headphones in and using it. So the display on the Moto G is not the best, but it's not the worst. It's a 720p panel, and under direct sunlight and really bright areas, you might have a little bit of a tough time reading what's on your display. But for the most part, in most situations, you'll be just fine. You'll just have to crank up the brightness all the way. It's not the sharpest display, and color reproduction is not the best, but it has excellent viewing angles, and it's gonna do its job, and it's gonna serve its purpose. The front-facing speaker on the Moto G kind of makes up for the lower resolution. It gives you a more pleasurable media experience, especially with the volume being a little bit louder than, say, a rear-firing speaker or a downward-firing speaker. Speaking of that front-facing speaker, I love the new design. They don't really stick out anymore, and it makes the screen just look a little bit better, a little bit more flush. But it does attract a little bit more lint than the previous model. And there's always an easy way to clean the lint out of that little speaker grill. Just get a piece of Scotch tape, tuck it in there, and boom, it's clean. So the 2015 Moto G comes in 2 different configurations. You can pick it up with 1GB of RAM and 8GB of onboard storage for about $180, or you can get 2GB of RAM and 16GB of onboard storage for about $220. I definitely recommend going the $220 route because of the RAM. Not necessarily for the extra memory, because it does feature an SD card slot expandable up to 32GB on both models, and it rocks. So even though this thing doesn't have the highest end specifications, it still has a great software experience which makes it fly. It's very responsive, background app switching is amazing, and it's super fluid. You will hardly notice any lag when it comes to this phone. In fact, I did a video comparing it to the S6 in terms of performance, and you might be surprised. You can find that video right up here. So in terms of just using this thing as a phone, whether it's texting or just making phone calls, it's awesome. Call quality is amazing. Even though it doesn't feature Wi-Fi calling or HD calling, it's still a pleasurable experience. And thanks to that little dimple on the back, you got a place to rest your finger when you're making those phone calls. It's a little things that Motorola does. It just makes everything a little bit better than, say, some of the competitors. Now this is probably area specific, but I had an issue with running voice and data at the same time, and I'm on the T-Mobile network. Again, I think it might just be my area considering we have a new band of T-Mobile LTE, but I'm just throwing that out there. So everybody knows the Moto G doesn't have the highest end specs. That's how they can keep that price really cheap and really affordable. But gaming is actually not that bad. Whenever I played my little Marvel game that you see here, it played flawlessly, and I also played Need for Speed and a few other games. But when using a game that has a lot of high frame rates or intense graphics like Mortal Kombat X, you might notice a stutter here and there. But honestly, for a phone of this caliber and for a budget phone with the price that this phone has, it doesn't perform bad. One thing I noticed right out of the box whenever I was, downloading apps and just backing up or restoring my phone is it does get quite warm right around the camera area. I'm just letting you guys know, so don't be alarmed if your phone gets a little bit hot on the back. And I never even really experienced this with gaming. It was mainly just downloading apps. So as far as using your phone as a hotspot, because I know a lot of people end up getting budget phones and just using them specifically for a hotspot with like a prepaid SIM card, works just fine, and I was able to get pretty good range on it. I'd say my range for the hotspot was anywhere between 10 to 15 feet without any obstructions, and I maintained a good data connection. But one area where I didn't maintain a good connection was with Bluetooth. I noticed with the Moto G, specifically the 2015 Moto G, I had a lot of Bluetooth connectivity issues. Whenever I connected it to my car, it would connect just fine, and it would always reconnect, but whenever I was listening to music or whatever it was I was doing, including a phone call, it would just start breaking up randomly. It wouldn't disconnect, but it would be a lot of static and really choppy, and then it would smooth out and start playing, and then all of a sudden 5-10 minutes later, it would start breaking up again. And I asked a few of my buddies about it, and they also had Bluetooth connectivity issues with the 2015 Moto G. So the camera UI I pretty much covered in the previous video, so I'm not going to go over that again. It'd be kind of redundant. So if you missed that video, make sure you check it out if you want to know about the camera software. But as far as the picture quality goes, here's a few examples. The results are hit and miss, but when it does hit, it takes some pretty damn good photos. But it also overexposes a time or two, and in low light, you can see you get quite a bit of noise. But if you are that serious about smartphone cameras, then you probably wouldn't be getting a Moto G, but you can always add a noise reduction filter to it and get something like this. I mean, don't get me wrong, in great lighting, this thing can take some pretty amazing pictures. It does feature the same sensor as a Nexus 6, it just doesn't have optical image stabilization. The dual flash on the back does give you a little bit better skin tones than the previous model, but it's still nothing to write home about. So as far as the front-facing camera goes, it's decent. I wouldn't say good, but I wouldn't say horrible. But at the same time, I wouldn't be taking any selfies with the front-facing camera of the Moto G. Even in decent lighting, such as being in your car, you can see you still get quite a bit of noise, and it just doesn't look very good. So when it comes to video quality, 1080p is pretty good. They have fixed the focusing issue I felt that was in the 2014 Moto X. It doesn't constantly hunt to focus anymore, and it pretty much locks on a little bit better. However, it still needs a little bit more improvements, but for a $200 phone or $220 phone, it does a really good job. Now for the 720p slow motion, it's not that great. I guess I'm just spoiled with the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, so don't expect to get mind-blowing slow motion. As you can see here, it's very grainy, and it just doesn't have that great quality. So let's wrap this thing up with battery life. The 2015 Moto G has amazing battery life. Let me just repeat that. Amazing battery life. And that's because it doesn't have the highest end specs, and it doesn't have a high resolution display. So it doesn't need all that excess power to push any high end specs. And when that happens, you get battery life like this. So pretty much you're able to get anywhere between 5 to 7 hours of screen on time, and that is amazing. Of course, it all depends on your usage. Are you connected to LTE most of the time, or are you connected to Wi-Fi most of the time? In any case, you're still getting damn good battery life, and it will not disappoint. This phone is king when it comes to battery. Standby is amazing, screen on time is amazing, it just doesn't disappoint. So my final thoughts, I'd recommend this phone to anybody. It doesn't matter if you want a flagship or if you want a budget phone. This phone just performs excellent in all categories except of course the camera department, and it doesn't have the highest resolution display. If those two things aren't important to you, then you'll be just fine with this phone. Even gaming. The Mortal Kombat X is a very high frame rate game, and it has intense graphics, and honestly, a little bit of choppiness does not mean that you shouldn't get this phone. It doesn't heat up during gameplay at all, at least in my testing, and it just performs well. I don't know what else to say about it. This phone performs excellent for its price. Honestly, if I wasn't upgrading phones all the time and I didn't need the latest and greatest phone because I just didn't have that need to get it, I would get this for myself and be just fine. Reason being, I don't need a great camera on my smartphone. I have an RX 100 Mark IV. I can just link it to my phone, boom, be done with it. I don't need a high resolution display. 720p is fine on a mobile device for watching anything on YouTube or even watching some videos on Netflix. So here's why the Moto G is so important. Motorola is trying to change the game, giving you a great phone experience pretty much in all aspects at an affordable price. Take the Moto X Style for example. Take the Moto G for example. Take the Moto X Play, which is available in other countries for example. They're just giving you great phones at an affordable price, and they need us to support them to continue doing this. Well guys, that pretty much concludes my review of the 2015 Motorola Moto G. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think? Do you guys want one of these? Who knows, maybe a giveaway in the future. If you like this video, drop me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, follow me on all my social media connections, and of course, I'll talk to you in the next video. Peace.